And I have with me here in the studio Dr. Sam Amadi, Arise News Analyst. Glad to have you in the studio. Let me begin with the youths, the Arewa coalition of groups under the aegis of Arewa Youth Federation. How significant and impactful is the call by them for a Southeast president?
Well, it's significant. I think that it showed that the argument around the justice of Yapa should shift in 2023 is not merely a Southeast phenomenon. We've seen increasing voice. We've seen even Afenifere and others. And so getting the voice of groups outside the Southeast makes the case better than Southeast. I mean, Southeast making the case for themselves would appear self-interested in many ways, but other groups coming out to say, look, this is a case that has merit because it's founded on justice, in the sense that this is the major geographical zone that has not produced a president. But then how did it play out in the context of competing with the agency of winning election? The ruling party has greater leeway to respond to the justice of the case. The opposition party often is going to be much more driven by the urge to get back to power.
Yeah.
And so the calculus will include winnability, dynamics of getting victory, and of course, a sense of justice. So, but if you're going to, what this tells us, if you're going to talk about power shifting to the south, then it's about shifting to the southeast. The nomenclature south doesn't seem to have much weight with justice because the southwest has had 8 years plus 8 years of vice presidency. The south has had 6 years of President Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan.
And so when we talk about power shift to the south, it's really, if it's going to be on merit, on justice, it's southeast. Then if the parties don't want to shift power because of political calculations, that's a different thing. But it's really kind of illogical to talk about south and not talk about southeast. And that's what these visits suggest. And look, clearly, if we really want to look at zoning as responding to the challenge of inequity, who has not had it, the southeast. But if you want to say, look, let's transcend zoning,
Yeah.
and then it should be free for all.
All right, I'll probably get to what it does for unity of the nation and Dao's ethnic, narrative and the tension it builds. But let's talk about when Wike says, Governor of Rivers State, when he says PDP will not give the ticket to one who would not serve the interest of the people. Is this PDP stance or Wike stance? How do you even determine who will serve the interest of the people?
Well, again, I think Governor Wike is right in that concern about national interest. We shouldn't allow the politics of zoning or politics of who comes where, from where, defeat the essence of national politics is to preserve and promote strategic national interests. Now, someone can argue that part of that innocence, equity, justice is part of it. They're not mutually, they don't exclude themselves. They're not like alternatives. But yes, this is Wike speaking. I'm not the party speaks through the NEC, the chairman, but he is a major leader in the party. And the sentiment, I think, is, look, even if you say X, PDP has to get a candidate who can win election, because they're opposition too. They have to get a candidate who can establish trust, whose pedigree shows capacity to bring people together, who the people can trust. So in a time when we have too much centripetal forces, people are claiming the country, people are quarreling, people have lost faith in a common destiny, and people are now pulling apart. What you need is a leader that everybody can trust because of their pedigree, they're temperate, they're liberal, they're open-minded. So the critical issue is inclusion, justice, and development. So yes, I would take Wike to me and say, look, whatever we're going to do, we want somebody that can include everybody. We want somebody whose history shows he can give justice to everybody. I want somebody who can build a coalition to drive development. And so in the PDP or APC, you can see not more than 3 or 4 people probably who fit this bill, whose record of service shows capacity to manage diversity, to build coalition, to tolerate dissent, and to bring people together. So I think that's really what Wike is
alluding to.
Yeah.
Now he says all the people contesting, he's more suitable, or none is more suitable. Does that mean he's getting ready to throw his heart into the ring?
I think it looks like he's a potential candidate. I mean, he has got the money, the resources in Rivers State. He has got the clout. He's a former 2 times governor, a minister. He has built some coalition with some Southeast governors and so on. So he's somebody to watch out that he will run. But again, the question is electability, favorability. You know, in Nigerian elections have been elections where people go for the least damaging or threatening prospect. Political leaders really don't like somebody who's going to dominate the scene, who's going to be intolerant, who may not listen to everybody. So they're likely going to say, look, once somebody...
Are you describing Wike's attitude?
Basically, I'm saying, look, the perception out there could be that this is, swashbuckling, brusque, and maybe a little bit threatening. But that's how political optics work. But again, he has got capacity to be determinative in saying we can choose. But maybe he can't make himself president, but he can actually be a good kingmaker. Contender.
All right, let's talk about this question of youths. Okay, even before we talk about the youths, let's talk about the former governor, Ezife, who says he falls the suspicion that Igbo politicians cannot be trusted. Is there really any basis for this? Does the suspicion even exist? Because he was talking on the basis of Biafra and all that.
Yeah, there could be suspicion, but it has no empirical basis. I mean, if you look at simple rationality, if people invest outside their domain, it means that they have diluted even their nature. So Igbos have investment. In fact, they're most people who care more about Nigeria by self-interest, not just altruism. You don't want Nigeria to go to flames because you have investment. But this is within what we call, dangerous troops around, maybe hate speech or demonization. But clearly no evidence to show it. But it's subliminal. People feel this sense after the Biafran War, or can we trust Igbos? This is groupthink. This is some false key argument there. I don't think it's going to influence political decision making at the highest level. And of course, we've been in this country for decades, working together, share common ties in business and economics and everything. And so I think most reasonable people will wave it away and say, look, we're looking really for what works for Nigeria. At this point, we want to see a leader who can bring us together. And that requires two things. Structure. You have to create new structure, which we talk about shared power. You have to also create imagination and symbolism through leadership. That people say, okay, we are really one. I think the last 5 years has created a too much tension, pulling away, and people now think that we hate ourselves. I think no serious person can say we can't trust a people who are across the country making investment with solid footprint everywhere.
Everywhere in the country. That's the one thing you can say about Igbo people. Yeah. Before I let you go, let's talk about the youth. Youths and we together. They're talking about, coming together across the entire nation, to probably start tinkering with ideas of changing how things are. And Abdul Salami Abubakar, the former head of state, he urges youths to show more interest. What's the best way for youths to get into the scheme of things in politics?
I think that's a good question. You see, I used to run a youth academy, and my argument against youths who want to carve out for themselves is that that's not how politics works. If you look at people talk about the Macron and all this, these guys didn't have affirmative action for being young. These are people who showed competence, capability, and they got mainstreamed. I like what former President Abu Salam said about somebody who can, I think it was Afe Babalola, someone who can spend 14 hours working, who is below 60. So we want a youthful president, but we don't necessarily say we're going to look for youth and say, youth, give us somebody. It's among the political actors. We look for persons who have the agility, who have the capacity to think, to work hard, because modern day leadership, political leadership, is managerial. You got to get the energy, the knowledge. So I would say yes, we need to move to younger.
Do they even have the capacity in terms of war chest?
Exactly. First, even if war chest, people can support and push a young person who has shown faithfulness, intelligence, and accomplishment. So this is not like a carve-out. Young people wait. This is our time. Give it to us. Youth o'clock. No, it's about young people getting involved, and maybe in the next electoral cycle, you could see a 30-year-old, 40-year becoming president. We've seen, for example, Bawa in EFCC. Assuming he does a great job.
Oh, yeah.
It's about 40. Okay. Yeah. So he has capacity to fill into a bigger space if he delivers being a young person. But if you sit back and say young people need affirmative action, it's not going to happen. The old guys are going to still play the game.
Still be there. All right. Thank you so much. Sam Amadi, Rise News analyst, for your analysis.